Caribou Weather Dude YouTube channel. Joey only back in the studio this afternoon. Yeah, look, I left the broom in the picture again. Well, I'll tell you about one thing that I am really happy about right now, and that's the NHL playoffs right now. It's pretty exciting to see 5 Canadian teams in. It's too bad the Flames just about squeaked in. They were close, but they had 14 overtime losses. If they'd converted a couple of those, they'd be in the dance right now. We'd have 6 Canadian teams on the go, 3 in each conference. That would have been awesome. Way to go, Calgary. I know they're blaming like other teams, like, oh, it's because of St. Louis. It's because of Minnesota. No, it's because you have 14 overtime losses. That's all it is. Like, win a couple shootouts or whatever, you're in. Anyways, I want to talk about why the Maple Leafs are a different team this year. It's not the same Maple Leafs you're used to talking about. And I've known this for a little while. And the thing is, after last year's playoffs, I was like, it's going to take an awful lot for me to watch the Leafs again. And then they started making some acquisitions. Like, first of all, they get a new coach. They get the chief himself, man. And this guy's awesome. Okay, we'll talk about the Leafs coach. We'll talk about some of the differences, some of the things. But let's go first back in time to year 1 of the Austin Matthews era. Let's go there today. Let's go. There it is. This is bad news.
My God, falling out right now.
Anything could happen.
Get on!
Wow. I'll watch the video later. They try mopping this. If you would do a guy a favor, hit like, share, subscribe, tell a friend, keep me in business here. We'll be talking weather again here pretty soon, but I want to get some thoughts out about the Stanley Cup playoffs and how happy I am actually about that. That's the one thing that's kept me a little bit cheered up. And yesterday's big win over Ottawa delivered what I had hoped to see with this team, a more relaxed, comfortable team that's defensively built. Finally, I've been crying for defensemen for like 20 years, man. Literally, defense and goalie. I've been like, oh, another Nick Patan, another winger who's 5'2", great. I heard he's fast. It drove me nuts. There was a lot of Leafs teams I was tired of. I was sick of. I was, not happy with. Like, I get to the playoffs and be like, come on, anyone has a chance. But then it's like, you got to play against Boston or, well, who first? So I'm going to go back to the 2016-17 season, first of all. 40-27-15. And that's when Mike Babcock, it was his second year as coach. Remember Mike Babcock? Oh, God, that was unfortunate. So the team we had that year, I mean, look at this team. Is this like anything even comparable to what we have now? Van Riemsdyk, there you got Kadri, who probably got suspended that season too in the playoffs. Then you had Bozak. I remember Tyler Bozak. There you go. Jake Gardner. I don't understand how he was plus 24. The guy gave so many pucks up. He was so weak. He drove me nuts. Zaitsev drove me nuts. Connor Brown was okay. Komarov could never score for anything. Hyman got better. Morgan Riley, minus 20 this season. Minus 20. And then look who else I got. Like Hunwick, Polak, Josh Levo, Matt Martin. This was a real great team, and goaltending wasn't too bad. Anderson there. But then, who they have for backup is like Curtis McElhenney, then Jonas Enroth and Anton Bibo. Okay, so this was a team that was never going to get past the Washington Capitals. 2017-18 Babcock era, season 3, 49-26-7. Still lots of losses. A little bit better of a team, produced a little bit better, but still look what we got on here. Still the Jake Gardner era, and he's like 52 points points altogether, and people are like, "Oh, Jake Gardner's pretty good." And I'm like, the eye test says otherwise. Morgan Riley still a minus. That's look what we got for veteran strength here. Patrick Marleau. Ron Hainsey. There's our top defense pair there. Ron Hainsey, Zaitsev, Roman Polak. Were we ever, and Kaspanen's way down there. Kasperi, Andreas Janssen, they were okay. Justin Hall started to make appearances. This began the dreaded era of the Justin Hall. Oh my God, I couldn't stand the Justin Hall era. Calle Rosen, Martin Marincin. Well, there was some great defensive depth there. Martin Marincin, that's what we had. Yeah, okay. Just to give you that idea. Anderson, 918 save percentage. Okay. 38 wins, not bad. 2.81 goals against average. Kind of high-ish for this era. McElhenney was awesome. 15 game starts, 11-5-1. But really, Calvin Pickard down the line, like they didn't have much in depth there on goal. Now 2018, 2019, still the Babcock era, 100 points, not bad. Third in the NHL division, going to lose to Boston again in the first round in Game 7, once again to Boston, like a nightmare, over and over again. Here's what's like third time now since 2013 it's happened. And then who we got this year? Now we finally got John Tavares in the mix, and he's good. 47 goals, nice addition. So a little bit of depth, but then we still got Kasperi Kapanen, Kadri again, who gets suspended every playoffs. Andreas Janssen. That's who are like, these little guys were it was all speed. That's what Dubas wanted. Then we got Patrick Marleau still, 16 goals. I mean, not terrible, but slow. Ron Hainsey still got Ron Hainsey, Frederick Gauthier, here we go. Now we got the Nick Petan era has started. Martin Marincin, it wasn't a great team. They had some top end talent up front, but still Dubas's philosophy for building a team wasn't producing good results. What would Frederik Andersen have been like if he'd had, just not horrendous defensive gaffes all the time or some block shots? 2019, 2020. It was bad. Started off bad with Babcock. He's just terrible. He's a monster. And then Sheldon Keefe took over. They went 27-15-5 with him. Not too bad, but still finished low. They lost to the Columbus Blue Jackets in the qualifying round. They didn't exactly even make the playoffs as a qualifying round because of the COVID era. And again, Alex Kerfoot, we had the Kerfoot era now well underway. Jason Spezza, that's our veteran help, a guy who never won a cup, Andreas Janssen. And then we got Justin Hall now playing 68 games. Like, I couldn't stand it. But he's plus 13. People are like, oh, Hall's good. And I'm like, the eye test says otherwise. We had Travis Dermott, Rasmus Sandin, Cody Ceci. There's a winner, somewhere in there. Nick Petan, Nick Shore, Kyle Clifford, Adam Brooks. Remember Nick Petan? That was like, I'm pretty sure that was a deadline acquisition. Actually, like the year before, like we're all waiting for a new defenseman or like something to like put us over the edge there, and they get Nick Petan. Like that was wow. The guy's like I said, like 5'0", and then only a .909 save percentage. Anderson, not that great. Hutch, .886 save percentage, not great. Then we had Jack Campbell start in there, 2.63 goals against average. Okay. 2020-21, you might remember, is the disastrous COVID season there. 35-14-7. Yeah, just killed the Canadian division right until we met the Montreal Canadiens. Like, Carey Price came up for just one last gasp of awesomeness before it was time to retire. And Carey Price made us suffer bad we did. And, but the team here had some suffering still in it too. Like Hyman was getting better by that time, sure, but we still had the Kerfoot era. Then we had Joe Thornton, but he's like 43 at the time. Justin Hall on defense. Yeah, I mean, their stats all look great this year. You'd think like this is a pretty good team. They even had Alex Galchenyuk chip in 12 points. Seemed like a better team because you're playing against the Canadian division, and but even in the Canadian division, we weren't good enough to win the Canadian division. Here's our deadline acquisition there. Nick Petan played 7 games, was -2. Like, and they look at the depth of this team. It was still bad. TJ Brody finally came over at some point around here, and had a couple years of him. He was okay when he got here to the Leafs, but then gradually now we got Frederik Andersen with 13, 8, and 3. But here you start to see some leaks in the problem there. 2.96 goals against average, sub 900 save percentage. Jack Campbell there, 921 save percentage. Started to seem like, oh, maybe Campbell's pretty good, 17, 3, and 2. And but he wasn't. He was just it really was just like some sort of Canadian division magic that was going on. Still the Sheldon Keefe era, 54. This is like one of their best seasons ever, actually. 54, 21-7, and 21-22. And they lost in the first round to Tampa Bay. Ouch. Yeah. Second in the Atlantic Division this time. Why is Joey thinking this team is different than these teams? Again, like look who we're going with. Michael Bunting, overvalued Michael Bunting. Not nearly as good as people wanted to give him credit for. He's just playing with Matthews and Marner. Pierre Engvall. We got Pierre Engvall. Yeah, we had 15 goals out of him. That blew me away at the time. And same with Mikheyev. He scored a lot of goals, and people thought, hey, maybe this Mikheyev is something. But these weren't playoff defendable players. That's the problem. Andre Kasia. I don't even remember him. I don't remember him playing 50 games for the Leafs. Like, that's how memorable his time in Toronto was, although he seemed to have 14 goals. So, that's funny. And the plus minuses, Wayne Simmons down there, Jake Muzzin, he was starting to tie him out by then. We had Mark Giordano, but, again, it's like, what do we have for our defense? We had Giordano, Liabushkin, Dermott, we weren't screaming in defensive depth still. Morgan Rielly is our top defenseman. Finally, he's got a season where he's in the plus 16, 68 points, one of his best seasons, probably his best season, that one. And then Jack Campbell took the reins over and seemed like he was okay, everyone thought at the time, but it was just an illusion. Then he's like, give me lots of money. And Leaf said no, and then he went to Edmonton, and then we found out who he truly was once he got in front of a team like Edmonton. 2022, 2023, 50, 21, and 11. Second in the Atlantic again. They lost in the second round this time to Florida Panthers. They actually got through a round. We started thinking like, hey, maybe this is a team that next year we'll kick it up to the next level. We had Calle Jarnkrok. That's a bit of an improvement. We still had Bunting at the time, chipping in 23 goals. But again, he was playing with Matthews and Marner mostly. We still have depth of Kerfoot, Kampf, Giordano, Engvall, Rasmus Sandin, Justin Hall, wasn't great. Giordano was well in the plus. He played pretty good that year. But his best years were behind him. We got Ryan O'Reilly. He was okay, I guess. Sam Lafferty and Noel Acciari. That was some better improvements. Jake McCabe came over then. That was a big improvement on depth. But then we had Dennis Malgin. Yeah, that's another I think he was a deadline acquisition as well. Dennis Malgin, maybe the year before, something like that. Like, woohoo, we got Dennis Malgin. Again, the guy's like 4'3" and wasn't very good. And then Eric Gustafsson too. That's like another big splash at the deadline. It's not like getting Brandon Carlo, I'll tell you that. Samsonov, he had an okay season that year for sure. But then we had look who our depth is. Joseph Wall finally starting to make some appearances. Played 7 games and was 6-1. So he started looking pretty good back then already. Then their last season of Sheldon Keefe there, they finished 46, 26, and 10, third in the division. Weren't quite as good. Goals against, 21st, goals for, second. So they scored a lot, but they let a lot of goals in, man. Like when you score 300 goals, but you let in 261, how deep are you going to go in a playoff series? And again, the defense was starting to get addressed. And we're starting to see the team that we have now take shape. Matthew Nyes was starting to be a bit of a force. We did have Bertuzzi at that time, and he was a bit of a beauty. But, TJ Brody had kind of outlived his usefulness. Like, he looked okay, but they were, for his plus minus on your stats don't look bad. But he was really playing more and more sheltered as time went on. Bobby McMahon started to be a force. Starting to see the team that we know take shape. No more Justin Hall finally. No more Jake Gardner. The last season of Giordano, but he's done. John Klingberg. Like, what were they thinking? One of the things I really didn't like when now we have a new general manager this season. He's starting to put the team together the way he wants. I did not like the Klingberg signing from the moment it happened. And you still look at who we got here, like Liabushkin. Here's a prospect that we end up trading to Boston for Brandon Carlo, which was probably a good trade. But look at this. Samsonov played 40 games with a 3.13 goals against average. Like, he was just atrocious. Save percentage under 900. We had Wall stepping up there with, but he's like 12-11 and a 3 goals against average. Like, the team wasn't really good. The save percentage from the team was 898. Like, it was down there. Goals against average 3 or higher in a game. So they weren't good. They really weren't it was sad, and I didn't want to watch this team anymore. But then suddenly, like magic, Keefe is fired, and that nervousness that sort of always came with Keefe, like there's sort of this, like, he wasn't a very settling guy. Like, that's the thing about Keefe. He was cool, and I liked him, but he wasn't settling. Like, he didn't get this air of like just relaxation the way that Berube has, where he's just always kind of chilling together. And the guys seem to respect him and respond underneath him. The defensive structure's there, but also they've gone out and got, with their new general manager, they've gone out and got some really good pieces like Oliver Ekman-Larsson. I mean, what was awesome was seeing right away in this series against Ottawa that started last night. It's like what was first to happen. It was, first goal from Oliver Ekman-Larsson, and it comes from Scott Lawton. One of the passes, and it's just like right away it's kind of like saying to everybody, hey, look, this is different. We got now McCabe, we got Brandon Carlo, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, we got Chris Tanev, we got these beasts, these tough beasts. We got a great defensive core. Maybe we don't have that like clear number one defenseman, but we sure have a number two, a bunch of guys who are 2 or 3, you know what I mean? I've not been happy for a long time with Morgan Rielly, and on Leaf groups, people were mad at me when I was saying, trade Morgan Rielly and try to get a number one defenseman. Get rid of that money. Costs a lot of money, and this year he's not been great. And last night he gave up a puck like just right start of the second period, like just feeds a breakaway. Here you go at the blue line, the offensive blue line, and off. He's lucky that it didn't go in the net, but that's because one of the acquisitions was Anthony Stallers. Great acquisition. Maybe the only people on this team I'm not like huge on is Holberg and Robertson, but there's no one on this team now that I think like, oh great, he's on the ice. Like I just would dread the fact that Jake Gardiner had to play a shift. We're like in a series against Boston Bruins, and Jake Gardiner has to play 20 minutes. Like, oh my God, how do you think we're going to win? Ron Hainsey, that was our it was sad. It was sad. It's sad that these guys have spent this long without that kind of depth of defenseman, but also depth at forward as well. And, like these aren't like guys who are going to chip in 20, 30 goals on your third and fourth line. Well, maybe in a full season, Calle Jarnkrok, who really only had 19 games this year, 7 points, and we didn't really see the real Jarnkrok. He seems to have showed up last night. He was fast. He was all over the ice. He was great. Steven Lorentz, another great acquisition. They went out and got 3 guys from the Florida Panthers. Like, you're going to beat us and win a Stanley Cup? Well, we're going to take 3 of your key depth pieces, and they fit in wonderfully. And you saw that last night, that fourth line with Lorentz on it. So good, Lorentz and Jarnkrok. I feel like Max Domi is a force, even if he's not putting in a lot of points. He's fisting people in the face with 45 seconds to go, giving uppercuts there in the third period last night there. Max Domi, totally awesome. I'm totally impressed with him becoming more like his dad this season. You really see the feistiness, the willingness to go. I mean, he's always been a chirpy player, but he's kind of filled into that role. Like, I'm in Toronto, I've signed a contract, and if nothing else, I'm gonna give him the Domi experience. And maybe he's not quite like his dad. No one ever will be. But still, like, there is so nostalgic to see a Domi throwing an uppercut and getting escorted off the ice there with 45 seconds to go in the game. I'm really big on Chris Tanev. Just love the guy. I'm really big on Jake McCabe. I really like Ekman-Larsson. He's been awesome. Plus 14 this year. And, and there's not many guys in the minus on this team that matter. This team did pretty good this year, and in goaltending, they looked awesome. Anthony Stolarz with a .926 save percentage. Like, I've been waiting 20 years for a goalie to play like Stolarz did this year. 21-8-3. The dude was awesome. 3 shutouts in his last 4 games. This is not the same Maple Leafs team of all these years past. It's not, and last night showed it. The eye test of last night showed it, where they just played defensively sound. They gave up lots of shots, but from the perimeter, they didn't take too many penalties. They look calm. They look relaxed. They look like they were in control. I think they're ready to do some damage this year, and people have underrated them. I don't know if they'll win a Stanley Cup. I'm not predicting that. No, I'm not. But I'm thinking the disappointment we're used to is not going to be quite like we're used to. Could they even go to a third round? I feel that. I was watching Charles Barkley last night. He had the big board up, and he was like putting on all his picks for each round, who advances and who goes. So he says that the Lightning win the Florida series, and the Leafs play the Lightning in the second round, and the Leafs beat the Lightning and move on to the third round, where they win against Washington, which would be interesting if that's how it transpires, because, of course, at the start of all this era, it was Washington that beat the Leafs out. And I think the next year they went on to win the Stanley Cup. They were a very good Washington team at that time, and still are, evidently, the best team in the East, I believe. So might be fun to play them. If somehow Montreal could squeak on through and get to the third round, imagine that, a Toronto-Montreal finish. Well, who also Charles Barkley said would get to the Stanley Cup final? Unbelievably, he picked the Edmonton Oilers. He said that Colorado will beat out Winnipeg in the second round. Maybe. I don't know about that. But he seems to think that Edmonton will go on. I'm not sure about that. But maybe they'll take the fourth year in a row they got the curse against the Los Angeles Kings. Maybe that could be the case. Anyways, it's on a hockey channel here, but I do love my Leafs. I'm a diehard. I've been watching and listening to the radio since I'm a kid, and even now, most of the games I listen to on the radio during the week, unless it's on the TV. So like Hockey Night in Canada, on the CBC app or whatever. So I'm having to find new ways to watch hockey again, NHL webcast or whatever. But I have a feeling that the Jets are going to go far, and if somehow the miracle could happen that the Leafs make it to the Stanley Cup Finals, I would hope that if they're going to lose to anybody, it's to Winnipeg. Wouldn't that be awesome? Wouldn't Canada have just the most insane time? Barkley thinks that the Oilers are going to win the Stanley Cup, that they're going to beat the Leafs in the final. I don't know about that. I don't think that the Oilers could beat the Leafs. That's not been the case whenever they've met on the ice at all. The Leafs have stomped them a lot the last bunch of years. So maybe one or two there Edmonton won on, but it hasn't been good for them, and I don't think Edmonton's goaltending or defensive depth very good. It hasn't been for a long time. You got McDavid and Draisaitl, sure, but the team around them hasn't really improved fundamentally, and they're kind of a disaster, and I'd be pretty choked if I were McDavid by now. The thing is, they were in a weak division for a lot of years, so people said, oh, look how good Edmonton is. And it's well, yeah, they play a lot of games against teams that aren't really good. The Western Conference isn't near as strong as the East. It's when you've been Toronto and you start off against Boston or Tampa or Florida all the time, except for there is the Columbus aberration, the unholy Montreal aberration. But if Toronto is always having to face this caliber of opposition, and it's tough. The East is tough, man. It's really tough. It's been tough. The West used to be tough 15, 20 years ago. It was the conference that it was really hard to win in. There was a couple teams that would just stomp you. But, the East has been tough for a long time. Don't sell Carolina out. They're way better than anyone thinks, and I have no idea what's going to happen with this Dallas and Colorado series. That's anyone's guess, I think. That's pretty much my Stanley Cup playoff thoughts. And then there's the Wild versus, Las Vegas. Who cares? That's a who cares series. Whatever happens there happens, so, Las Vegas has won a cup recently, so don't sell them out either, I guess. There's a lot of new pieces there, but they seem to still maintain that same identity as a team. So anyways, hit like, share, subscribe. Usually a weather channel here, but thought I'd give my Stanley Cup thoughts on why this isn't the same Maple Leafs team anymore. Okay, bye for now, everybody.